Hello, my name is Jerry Graham, very grateful recovered alcoholic.
Jerry.
I'm going to start this off a little different than usual. We lost a member of our group today, or last night, and to this disease. So let's take a moment of silence for Bernice. Amen. Thank you. People don't die from alcoholism. People die from fighting alcoholism and addiction. If I'm fighting alcoholism and addiction, I'm going to lose. That's the bottom line. I can't fight it and win. And just when I think maybe I'm strong enough to fight it and win, it gets proved to me over and over that that's not the case. So the best thing to talk about tonight, as far as I'm concerned, is the hope that's in this program, especially for all the newcomers here. It starts off on our title page. It says, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Recovered. What does that mean? Does it mean we're cured? No. And there's a lot of people that's not here tonight that can attest to that. What recovered means is that the mental obsession has left us. The spiritual malady is being taken care of by our actions. The physical allergy is still within every one of us, and it's never going to go away. But that's okay if I do what I'm supposed to do. If I wake up tomorrow and my brain says, you've been sober 15 years, you could drink, then before long I'm going to be battling alcoholism and alcohol, and I'm going to lose. This is about working through these steps, getting connected to a power greater than myself, surrendering everything to that power, and living life. And since I've done that in 2009, I haven't ever thought that a drink was a good idea since then. I haven't fought it every day. If I'd have fought it every day, I would have lost. That's the bottom line. In the first step, it says that I'm powerless over alcohol or drugs. I don't care what your drug of no choice is. Doesn't matter. First step is where I concede to myself that I'm powerless over it. And I concede that I can't manage my own life. That's got to do with the mental portion of this. And when they talk about powerlessness, what they're talking about is the fact that if I put alcohol or drugs in my body, this phenomenon of craving is going to develop. My body's going to demand more and more. That's an abnormal reaction that real alcoholics and addicts have to alcohol and drugs. We have no control over it. So the only option is not to put it in our bodies in the first place. But how many times have you sworn, I'm never going to do this again? How many times have you told your loved ones, I'm never going to do this again? I looked in the face of my 7-year-old daughter and told her, I'm not going to do this again. And by 5 o'clock that evening, I was doing it again. And it's not because I like to lie to my daughter. I love my daughter. It's because I didn't have the power to manage that decision, whether to pick up or not, because I couldn't stand the way I felt. That's the only reason we use. That's the only reason we drink. We want to change the way we feel. End of a horrible day, I need some relief. End of a great day, I need to celebrate. It's never just quite good enough the way life is on life's terms, right? Now, I took that to excess. I went to my first AA meeting because the U.S. Navy decided I needed to, not because I wanted to. In 1977, I didn't get sober till 2009. I'm a slow learner. In the midst of all that time, and I'll spare you all the detail, in the midst of all those years, I had a few spiritual experiences that I know were real spiritual experiences, but I didn't take any action based on those spiritual experiences. Without action, nothing happens. The old timers said, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I was taught by my parents, and I was taught by society, and I was taught by everything. Change your thinking and your actions will change. Well, I never could find the switches to flip up here to change my thinking. It didn't work. When I changed my behavior, my thinking followed along just fine. And I found out it's so much easier to change my behavior. Have any of y'all ever been told, you need to change your attitude? Any of y'all heard that? Come on, give me some hands. Who's all heard that? Huh? Yeah. How much luck have you had with that? Changing your attitude. I couldn't find a way to change my attitude. And then my second sponsor explained the second definition of attitude to me. It's an aeronautical term. It means angle of approach of a plane to a runway. Plane's coming in, it comes in too steep, you crash and die. Comes in too shallow, you run off the end of the runway, crash and die. But if the angle of approach is right, then you have success. What I found out about attitude is not something I control with my brain, it's something I control with my actions. I may be having a horrible, miserable day, but I can stick my hand out and ask somebody how they're doing and really try to care about the answer anyway. I can control that action. I don't want to go to a meeting tonight. I can go ahead and go to the meeting and I'm okay. I don't want to go out there to journey and work steps with that guy. I don't think he stands a chance. Or I can go ahead and go do it and let God sort that out, because it's certainly beyond me. Make sense? So step one was hard for me to learn. I went to the Navy behind step one because the judge said I could go there to prison. And then I went to the oil field behind step one and blew everything you could blow in the oil field. Then I went to a real judge and went to prison behind step one, because it seems like they don't like you selling methamphetamine around Andrews, Texas. I got out of there. I had a spiritual experience in there. Turns out it was a pretty good one. Because of being in prison and some of the things I did in there, I met Mindy, which is usually a pretty good thing. I did everything you can't do. I did everything you're not supposed to do. I put myself in danger of dying. I put myself in gun battles. I put myself out there on those rigs, staying up 3 and 4 days at a time on meth. I rode Harleys down the road at 120 miles an hour, drunk on my ass. I did everything, yet I didn't die. I know now that God was keeping me alive. This higher power was keeping me alive. It's the only reason I made it. And also, all of that happened so I could eventually have this program beat into my hard head and start helping other people. Because that's our real purpose. If you don't have a purpose tonight, I encourage you to look at page 77 of the big book. Our purpose is written very clearly there. It says our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and the people about us. What does that mean? It doesn't say our real purpose is to be a maximum service. It says to fit ourselves. My job is to take the actions to where I'm physically, mentally, spiritually fit to help somebody when God puts them in front of me. Right? Makes sense? But this all started with some surrender. Step 1 is all about surrender. Step 1 is about total surrender, realizing I can't fight this anymore. And every relapse that happens is a step 1 issue. Because suddenly we start thinking we have some control. Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I've been sober for a year now. It's a step 1 issue. I don't remember that I'm still powerless over alcohol and drugs and that my life is unmanageable by me. There's a line in the book that says we think things would be better if only we could manage well. It says it's a delusion. A delusion is a lie that we tell ourselves and believe. I can't manage my way well from this disease. All I can do is take the simple actions that I'm asked to take. But see, and maybe the first gift from God I had was a gift of desperation. I was desperate. So I did some of the things they asked me to do. I finally conceded to the fact that I could not drink or drug anymore, ever. That was scary. How am I going to watch football? How am I going to go fishing? How am I going to go hunting? But at the time, I was more fearful of living with alcohol than I was trying to live without it. And that was the desperation. So, Mindy got sober about 1.5 years before I did, and she went down to the AA meeting there in Andrews, Texas, and I told her, don't be going down there to that AA meeting telling all our business. Now, Andrews, Texas is 8,000 people. Pretty much everybody knew we were drunks and dope fiends. But I had this business, and I thought I was mighty important, and I didn't want to go down there and tell it. So she went down there and told all her business anyway, which is about how things usually work out with me and me. After a little while, I got nosy. I wanted to see what was going on down there. But you know, when she walked in that AA building and she was hooked on pain pills, they didn't trip over their singleness of purpose and tell her, oh, you have to go find an NA meeting. There wasn't no NA meeting in Andrews, Texas. They sat her down, they showed her the book and said, you don't ever have to feel this way again. Got her hooked up with a lady there that became her sponsor. I went. That lady's husband was there. He was going to become my sponsor. Oh, Lord, that poor man. So we did step 1. And I'm like, okay, I can't do this myself. Okay, now we're going to talk about step 2. Step 2 is real simple. On page 47, step 2 is, there's a great chapter, We Agnostics. You know why it's named We Agnostics? Because if we had any idea or any conception of God that really worked, we wouldn't be drunk. We wouldn't be shooting up. So we're all agnostics when we get here. So that chapter is a beautiful chapter, but the meat of it is on one sentence on page 47, or 2 sentences. It says, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there's a power greater than myself? I don't know. I didn't believe that. I told him, no, I don't believe that. And he said, are you willing to keep an open mind? I still had a little desperation. I said, I guess. And I'm thinking to myself, this is bull. This ain't going to work. So I said, yeah, I'm willing to keep an open mind. He said, good, moving on to step 3. That's how long it took us to do step 2. I've asked that question to literally probably hundreds of men. Very rarely do I find one that's not willing to keep an open mind. And if I do, I tell them there's not much more we can do until you're at least willing to keep an open mind. I'm not asking you to believe in God the way I believe in God. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to tell you how I believe in God. Not around AA, because it says in this book that it's a matter for each person to settle on their own. Catch me after the meeting, I got some pretty strong opinions about God today that I didn't used to have. But I said, I guess I'm willing. Okay, that's good enough. Then we moved on to step 3. You know? And it told me in step 3 that I was like a actor who wants to run the whole show. An actor's job is not to run the show. Can you imagine a movie if we got a bunch of movie stars together and we gave them each their own camera and each their own, they could do their own close-up and say the lines they wanted to say? You wouldn't have a movie worth watching, would you? This is yes and this is no. You wouldn't have a movie worth watching, would you? No. That's because it's not the actor's job to direct the show. As a matter of fact, they put it in here. It says, we can be screwing up. It says, on that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. I can have good motives and still be trying to run the show and still be messing everything up. It's not my job to run the show. And I told him, so I suppose you're going to tell me that's God's job? He said, I don't really care what you think right now. What I want you to do is stop running the show. That'll be good enough for now. So, he went on to tell me, over on page 62, that selfishness and self-centeredness, that's the root of my problem. And I'm like, oh, no. You don't know me, dude. I've got this company and I can give my employees bonuses and I treat them good and I do this and I do this and I do this. And he said, sorry, ladies. He said, you're a selfish bastard. And I said, no, I'm not. So I gave him a litany of all the things I did for my family, of all the things I did at work. And he looked at me again and he said, you're a selfish bastard. Finally, about third time, I was starting to get mad. He said, you want to shut up and listen to me for a minute? I said, I guess so. He says, you don't even know what selfishness means. Well, yeah, I do. No, you don't. He said, we're not animals. You seem to think that because you do nice stuff for people, you're not selfish. We all do nice stuff for people, in our addictions and out. We're not animals. We can do nice things. Selfishness means I'm not going to do a single thing I don't believe in, don't want to do, and don't feel like doing. And I got some bad news for you tonight. There's a lot of things in AA you ain't going to feel like doing, but we need to do anyway. And that's how you tell the winners from the losers. He said, that's what selfishness means. And I had to grumbly nod my head yes and no. And then his next sentence is really bad. This one really hurt me. So our troubles we think of basically of our own making. What? I didn't cause all this. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. Now, you're going to hear people say, this book is meant to be suggestive only. Well, there's your suggestion. We must get rid of selfishness or it kills us. That's pretty plain. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. And I'm thinking, oh no. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. I'll never, ever smoke marijuana. Check. I'll never do hard drugs. Check. I'll never go to prison. Check. I'll never drink and drive. Check. I'll never drink and drive with my kids in the car. Them some sorry people that do that. Check, check, check. I violated every moral conviction I had in the midst of my addiction. They didn't help me a bit. And I wanted to live up to them, but I didn't have the power because I was trying to do it on my own power. And doing this on your own power does not work. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. I'm like, you said just keep an open mind. He said, keep it. Let's move on. And then he read, me this part. It says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. That's what he was telling me to do. Quit playing God. Quit trying to run everybody's life around you. Well, I own a company. Where's the line? There is no line. Well, where's the spiritual line between me being a boss? There is no line. Your whole life is spiritual. Next, we decided here after this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He's the principal. We're his agents. He's the father. We're his children. Most good ideas are simple. And this was the concept, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. So Bill Wilson, when writing this book in the first 100, they lay out these steps. It's an analogy of an arch. Foundation and then the steps going up. And it says that this is the keystone. The keystone is at the very top of the arch. It holds the whole arch together. It leans on it. So they're saying this step's pretty important. So he read me these promises, which I would encourage you to read on the top of page 63. And it says, we were now at step 3, and then it does the third step prayer. He said, we're going to do the third step prayer. And I told him, well, I'm not. Why? I don't believe in it. Did I ask you if you believed in it? I said, we're going to do the third step prayer. And we're in this old dark shotgun building up there in Andrews, Texas, after about 3:30 after a meeting. It's all dark and dingy in there. That's when everybody smoked 20 cigarettes apiece in each meeting. Nicotine on the walls that thick. No dark building. You couldn't see nothing. And he said, we're going to do this prayer. And he got down there on his knees. And I thought to myself, I am not getting down on my knees and doing nothing with no man in no dark building in West Texas in the middle of the oil field. And he said, you are if you want me to sponsor you. And that gift of desperation kicked in. I said, well, I'll say it, but I don't mean it. He said, I don't care if you mean it or not. And he'd read a line, I'd read it after him. We got up and he said, now, I want you to get on your knees and do that prayer every morning. Starting in the morning. Can you do that? I said, no, I don't. That'd be hypocritical. I don't mean it. He said, oh, we wouldn't want you to be hypocritical by anything. So I got on my knees the next morning. I opened the book to page 63 and I read the words to the wall because that's what he told me to do. I don't know when that changed, but at some point I wasn't reading the words to the wall anymore. I was raised in a church that was so hellfire and brimstone, they thought all the Southern Baptists were going to hell. And I know today what that was called. That was called spiritual abuse. And a lot of people have been through it. And a lot of people are very scared of the God thing when they get here. But here's the deal. Through taking these actions, I've found a God, the Creator, that is all loving, all powerful, and all about grace. He has given me grace. Now here's the question. If He's given me grace, how am I giving grace to other people? He's given me unconditional love. How am I giving other people unconditional love? I'll be honest with you, sometimes I suck at it. But I persistently try to do it because it was done for me. That old sponsor I had, he only lived 9 months after I got sober, died of cancer. But he kept telling me the most valuable thing I have to give you is my time. And it turns out he was right. Am I willing to give my time to somebody? I don't care if you've been in here 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or if you're just sitting at the treatment center. Are you willing to give some of your time to help somebody else? Are you willing to show the new person that walks in that treatment center, oh, here's where this is, here's where this is, we're glad you're here, blah, blah, blah. The people that are doing that in treatment are the people that will do that when they get out of treatment. If you're not doing that in treatment, you're not probably going to do it when you get out of treatment. So the time to start being kind and helping others is now. Not next week. Now. I don't care where you're at in the steps. When I start practicing behavior, then I get used to it. And the behavior I need to be practicing is caring about people, is loving on people. Am I one of those people that are being positive, or am I out there at the smoking pit when it's time to smoke talking crap about the other clients? You know? How am I going to act? And then they told me, oh, this 4-step. I listened to these people around that probably had never done a real 4-step. This 4-step's going to be horrible. And the 5th step's worse. No, it's not horrible. Let's say that you have a great uncle that you didn't know anything about, but he knew all about you. And let's say he put you in his will to give you a convenience store fully stocked when he passed away. And let's say he passes away and you find out you get this convenience store fully stocked. You got a way to make a living for the rest of your life, right? You hire you some folks and you start running this convenience store. Everybody understand? Okay. And you're running this convenience store, and after about 2 weeks, you're thinking, man, I'm making good money. This is all right. Then you start hearing some customers complain. Well, you're out of this, and you're out of this, and you're out of this. Before you make an order to refill your store, what do you have to do? Take an inventory. So what we're trying to do with this 4-step is just that simple. All this garbage, the self manifested in various ways. Resentments, fear, guilt. That's all filling the shells of our brain. And there's no room to recognize this God that's already inside each and every one of us, because our head's full of all this crap. Right? So we do an inventory and we write this stuff down. You know, it doesn't say in this book that alcohol kills more alcoholics than anything else. It doesn't say that drugs kill more addicts than anything else. It says resentment is the number one offender. It says from it stem all sorts of spiritual sickness. So, it's real easy. Over on page 65, it shows you an example of an inventory wrote out. It's real simple. You go down the column. Who am I resentful at? I'm resentful at my ex. I'm resentful at this person, this person. I'm resentful at the police. I'm resentful at the judge, whatever. Write it down all at once in a column. Then I go right next to it and I put 3 or 4 words of why. Because I'm going to go over this with a sponsor and we're going to talk about it. So I just need to put down 3 or 4 words so I'll know what's going on. And then I go over to the 3rd column and I've got a list of stuff that it could affect. And I write down what it affects. Self-esteem, security, ambition, personal, sex relations. I write down what it affected. And then the 4th column, I always get with my guys when we go over the 4th column, because the example in the book shows 3 columns. So the 4th column, feel free to start on it if you want, but you'll need some help because we can't see our own errors. Because the 4th column is about our mistakes, not our part, our mistakes. I was molested when I was 8 years old. My sponsor said, well, what were your mistakes? I'm like, I didn't make no mistake. I was 8 years old. He said, really? He said, did you tell anybody about it? No. Did you use it for an excuse for bad behavior? Yes. Did you blame your alcoholism on it and your addiction? Yes. There were my mistakes. I had to look at that. I'm disregarding the other person involved entirely, right? Make sense? So I get this down and I get with my sponsor, and when somebody's doing a deal in Alcoholics Anonymous and they're doing a 5th step with one of their sponsees, it's a sacred deal. And I promise you, nothing's going to get repeated. We do the 5th step with a sponsor. We get this stuff out and we look at it. And we learn from it. And we move on. This doesn't have to be no horrible, painful thing. It's going to be a little uncomfortable writing some of this stuff down, but it ain't going to kill you. And I guarantee you, if you're alcoholic or addict, alcohol or drugs are going to kill your ass. So the fight with them will. So we do this fourth and fifth step. And then we move on to step 6 and 7, which are in the book. And these are the two shortest steps in the book. They're on page 76, one paragraph each. But they're probably two of the most important steps we'll ever do. So we've identified these character defects, or our sponsor has. What are character defects? Well, you've been selfish, you've been greedy, you've been this, you've been that. Identify these character defects. It doesn't really matter even if I identify them all, because I'm fixing to get rid of them. And let me tell you how. It says we then look at step 6. We've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we admitted are objectionable? So can He take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we won't let go, we ask God to help us be willing. The minute you do the prayer to ask God to help you be willing, get rid of something, you're already willing. But everybody's got character defects. But everybody wants to get rid of them. But everybody wants to hang on to one or two of them. Right? That's bad, that's bad, that's bad. But that married lady I've been seeing around the corner, I think I'll hang on to, I'll handle that part, God. Or that money, you can have everything but the money. You better let me be in charge of spending the money. No, I got to let go of all of it. And I ask God. And then I do this 7th-step prayer. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Why? Why the bad? Because He already knows the whole deal anyway. If I'm going to get some help with the bad stuff, I'm going to have to ask for it. And then it says the most important part of step 7, it says, I pray you now remove from me every single defect of character which I find embarrassing. Oh, wait, no, that's not what it says. Some of y'all ain't keeping up. It says, I pray you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. So I do this prayer every morning after my 3rd step prayer. And I have character defects pop up all the time. But if I've done this prayer, I'm guaranteed that those character defects are not going to stand in the way of my usefulness that day. I have no idea what character defect's going to pop up on any given day, or even how many I really have. It's not my job. My job is to ask God to remove all of them that keep me from helping somebody. Just that simple. Well, I'm in a lot of self-pity right now. Bad things have happened. I can't help anybody. Yeah, you sure can't. You ain't going to be able to if you don't get past it. Then we go on over 8 and 9. 8 and 9. We make a list. It says in the book we've got to start of that list from our 4th step. Make a list. My boss told me, do this, Jerry. I said, what? He said, make a list of everybody you ever harmed. And I said, really? He said, or anybody you ever met, because it's probably going to be about the same. So I made this list to the best of my memory, and I missed a lot of people, and they came to me later, and it was okay. I made that list. And then it don't say this in the book, but this is what he had me do. He had me write the list and how I harmed them. Then he had me separate that list into easy, difficult, and the no friggin' way column. And he had me start with the easy amends. And as I went through those easy amends, I began to see the results of it, and it made it easier. And then I went through the harder amends, and then I finally went through all of them. Now, amends 4 parts. number one, getting a hold of them and say, are you willing to hear my amen? Because if they're not, we don't want to force our way back into somebody's life that doesn't want us forced back in there. And second part is, here's how I think I harmed you. The third part is the part you better not have a resentment when you go make an amend, because the next part is, how else did I harm you? And they're liable to unload on you at that time. And the fourth part is, what can I do to make it right? And here's the deal. If they ask me to do something, I can absolutely do it as long as it doesn't violate the principles of the program that I'm living by. But let me give you a good example of not an amend. I feel bad. I lied to her. I'm going to call her up. So I'm going to call up an old girlfriend named Lisa that I haven't seen in 20 years, but I know she's married and lives out there in Phoenix, and I hunt down her number. Got a couple of kids, and I call her up. This old boy answers the phone. I says, Lisa there? Who is this? This is Jerry. Who are you? I'm one of her old boyfriends. So already I've made him not too happy. I've affected his day, and not in a good way. She gets on the phone. She says, who is this? I said, Jerry, do you remember me? I don't know. I said, I'm unforgettable. You got to remember me. Big, tall guy. Yeah, I guess I remember you. Well, I just wanted you to know that I lied to you, because at the time we were together, it was all about the sex. I didn't really love you. Have I improved that woman's day one bit? That is not an amend. If I'm making an amend to get something out of it or to make myself look better, that's not an amend. An amend is where I'm truly sorry for what I've done and want to set it right. And then if they accept my amend, awesome. If they don't accept my amend, awesome. I've done my part to sweep off my part of the street. Right? So if you've noticed, we've been taking some actions here, right? This is how we stay recovered. We continue to take these actions. So now I have a 10th step. So if an amend pops up, I do something today to somebody, then I immediately clean it up as soon as possible. That's what the 10th step's all about. And it says we start that 10th step as we cleaned up the past. Right? Keep your mouth shut. I'm going to say that. No. I don't do this perfectly, but I try to do this every day. Let me just tell you something before you get the wrong idea. Some days I work a horrible program. Some days I'm full of self. Some days I just can't seem to get connected. Sometimes I screw up. But the one thing that matters in this program is persistence. I persistently keep trying to do the right thing, and as long as I do that, I'm okay. If I miss my 3rd step prayer in the morning, God is not going to zap me drunk. If I don't clean up and amend immediately, God is not going to hand me a needle to put in my arm. It just don't work that way. I persistently try to do the right thing. And now I'll get to the selfish part. I persistently try to do the right thing because now that's what makes me feel good. Doing the wrong thing used to make me feel good, I thought. Getting a real drunk, getting real high, that used to make me feel good. What makes me feel good today is doing what I'm supposed to do. How did all that change? God did it. And so I don't think about a drink or a drug. If I start getting uncomfortable, if I get a piece of dishonesty in my life, I clean it up because I don't like feeling that way anymore. And I know the sure way not to feel that way is to surrender it to God and take the action I'm supposed to take, not get high. And that's such a relief. So here's the deal. If you're battling this thing every day, you're going to lose. Surrender. Surrender to win. Nobody likes the word surrender. Well, guess what? All surrender means is come on over to the winning side because you're losing. I have to just keep stumbling along, making mistakes as I make them, but trying to do the next right thing and trying to help people. Now, the 11th step gives me some really powerful things to do in the morning and at night. At night's when I review my day and go over how the day went, honestly. Usually, sometimes I lie to myself. And in the morning, it tells me how to spend a little time with God. Now, I'm a big, tall, dorky guy. And when I started trying to do meditation, I watched all this stuff on TV and everywhere else about meditation. So I'd get up there and try to do all this stuff and get in the right position to meditate. Didn't work for me. My sponsor says, maybe you should just go out on your back porch and have a cup of coffee with God in the morning. Guess what? That's worked out beautifully. Now I go to work really early in the morning, so I do a little talking to God all the way to work and back. You know? There's a way to do all this stuff. And then we get to the most important part. We need you to get through these steps quickly. We need you to get recovered quickly. 30 days. Out of the first 100 recovered alcoholics, none of them took more than 45 days to work these steps. And then we need you out there on the firing line with us, because people are dying all around us. We need you. We need you to care. We need you to help. It's a horrible disease. We need your help. I love you all. Thank you.